Good evening, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of the Oakwood University Church Abundant Living series. You are in the right place if you have logged on for the Christian Finance workshop, which is a part of our church's 8-week-long series. Of course, we have many great workshops going on a variety of topics. But this particular one that you have come to, I think you will really be happy that you joined, because we are providing you with such good practical information. And if you have been with us for the last few weeks, you already know that our facilitators, Dr. Everett Roper and Mr. Avery Jacobs, have done an amazing job of really opening our minds and our understanding to this topic of Christian finance and saving and investing, which is maybe something we don't talk enough about, particularly in our community. And so also why these workshops have been so valuable. And I hope that those of you who've been coming have benefited from them, have begun thinking about your own money management decisions. And we want to continue what we have started this week. Now, thus far, we have been talking a lot about some of the principles and basics of investment and saving. And tonight, we are actually going to get into some of the nitty-gritty, really practical how-to steps on this particular topic that we have for you this evening. So come on in, share with a friend who may need this information. Definitely invite someone to join us this evening. We're so glad that you're here, and we're going to just begin with a word of prayer, and then I will introduce you to our facilitator for the evening. Let's bow. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for another opportunity to come together and learn how to be good stewards of what you have given to us. May you, please, Lord, give us wisdom to know what best decisions to make for ourselves and our families. And in particular, I ask that you bless our presenter this evening, that you would give him what he needs in order to share the information that will benefit everyone. Thank you again for your blessing. Bless all those who are in attendance, and guide us and direct us in everything we say and do. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, again, my name is Kim Roper, and I am the host for this evening's workshop. And I'm very excited to introduce to you our presenter, or to reintroduce to many of you, Dr. Everett Roper, whom many of you know already as our stewardship director for the Oakwood University Church. And he, along with Mr. Avery Jacobs, have been leading us through these last 4 weeks talking about the principles of Christian finance. What some of you may or may not know about Dr. Everett Roper is that one of his many jobs is actually real estate investment, and he's a real estate broker and has many years of experience in this area, as well as certification and expertise. And we're just so blessed that he is able to present to us this evening some of the basic steps in getting started if you are interested in particular in real estate investment. And so I will let Dr. Everett Roper come in now and say hello and tell us what you have in store for us this evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Hi.
You look great. You look wonderful. You look wonderful.
Oh, thank you. So do you. So it is a little different tonight that it's just the two of us. Normally we have everyone on the call live, and this evening we actually have had to pre-record. So it's just me and you, babe.
Let's do it.
But I think that it'll be fun to just have a conversation. As I said before, a lot of what we've talked about thus far has been sort of general principles, right? And so what I would like for us to do this evening, since we can just kind of have a chat, is to do just that, just to have a conversation. I know you have some slides to present, but I also will be asking you some questions as you go along that I think others may have about the information that you're going to be sharing. So
this will be exciting because you're going to be the audience, and your questions are going to be real time because you haven't asked me any questions, so that's far.
Right.
So
we haven't talked about it.
So this
exactly.
is going to be good. I'm excited about it. So let me get started. I want to make sure I use the time fully and effectively. And I'm going to start with this chart, which is the chart we've been using all session long, all workshop long. And there we have a young lady who is frustrated because she sees this title, Principles of Christian Finance, and she realizes that her finances are in disarray. And so
I'm
by
sure
the
many
end of
people
this,
can relate.
exactly. So at the end of this workshop, we want to be able to help her comb her hair and
Ah,
get her fingers out of her hair. And we want her to feel comfortable and at least have an understanding of what it takes to be in control of your finances and getting your house in order, as they say. So let's jump right in. What have we done so far? So first couple of weeks, first 3 weeks, in fact, or should I say the first 4 weeks, we are covering saving and investing, retirement management. Last week, we had a strong discussion about life insurance. And tonight, we're going to jump into investing in real estate. Now, let me start off by saying a lot of people ask this question, right? A lot of people want to know, how do you invest in real estate? Um, the problem with that is, they think it's sort of like the stock market. All I've got to do is jump in. Well, I'm going to share with you tonight some tools, some reasons and some tools. Reasons why you may want to jump in, reasons why you may not want to jump in, and some tools for jumping in. And I'm going to preface everything I say by saying this: it's not for everybody. It is not for everybody, and you'll see why when we talk about some of the when we go into the conversation this evening. In the weeks coming up, we've got 4 more weeks after this. We're at the halfway point. We're going to talk about these additional topics. So, tighten your belt, get ready. There's some good information coming. We're not done yet. We're halfway through. Hopefully, you've learned a lot, and hopefully, you've reached out to Avery, to Lillian. Some of you have reached out to me already with questions, and that's exactly what we want. So, I look forward to engaging with you as we continue moving forward with this discussion on Christian finance. So, week 4, investing in real estate. Let's jump right in.
okay, so go ahead. I want to let you do the recap, but I do want to say that I think tonight's topic will be one that many people will be interested in because real estate is such a hot topic. So I'm definitely interested in hearing what you have to share.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can't watch the news without them talking about the housing market, right? It has
Yep.
gone up over the past few years, and it's really surprising to everybody because, when you talk about inflation, when you talk about quarantining and the way we shut down for a couple of years, year and a half, whatever you want to call it, when you talk about the economy, when you talk about gas prices, when you talk about everything, salaries, a lot of people haven't gotten increases in salaries over the past few years. The one thing that has remained constant is real estate increasing. And
Hmm.
so it's really baffling to most people because if you told me 5 years ago that we're going to go into a pandemic, be quarantined, wealth gap was going to increase, inflation was going to skyrocket, and gas was going to be $5, $6, $7, $8 a gallon, depending on where you live. But I told you, go ahead and buy some property so you can get invested in real estate. You tell me, are you crazy?
Right.
Are you crazy? But here we are. And the one thing that is constant is real estate. So let's just recap. How do we get here? And the reason why I want to recap, and I think it's important to recap, is because in week 1, we talked about saving and investing. But in week 2 and 3, we moved into retirement and life insurance. And so it's important to understand why we're here. So why are we here? Well, first of all, let's start off. Some of you have seen these charts before. If you came the first week, if you didn't, then this is good for you to just get caught up with us. So what is investing? Well, investing is positioning our funds to achieve returns or profit. Investing is positioning our funds to achieve returns or profit. Somebody is saying, well, that don't sound much different from saving. That's what I do when I save. Well, in actuality, saving is different. Let me tell you why. Saving is actually storing your income for a rainy day. Now, you could save and call it investing. Like, for instance, you might take your income or you might take your savings and you might put it under your mattress. Right? You say, I'm investing because I'm saving. Well, the difference in saving and investing in that analogy is that in saving, you're not trying to get any interest or any profit. You're just trying to store it so when a rainy day comes, you'll have it. When you invest, you are actually saying, you know, I'm willing to take some risk and I'm going to put these funds somewhere so that they can gain more value, so that it can gain more value. Remember, if I put it under my mattress, it's not going to gain any value. I'm going to get out what I put in. Unless I have a tooth fairy or somebody comes and adds some money to it, the money's going to stay the same. When I
The first thing I
Mhm.
think about with the saving is the parable of the servant
The
who hid
coins,
his
yeah,
coins in the who dug a hole in the backyard, basically. So
right.
that's kind of like
That's right.
same
He
thing.
said,
Yeah,
Master, look what I've done. Look what I've done. I
right,
gave you the money. Here's the money that you gave me. I didn't lose it. Nobody took it. I saved it.
right.
I protected it. And what did he
That
call him?
wasn't.
Called him a foolish servant. He said, you
Yeah.
should have done something with it. You should have multiplied it.
Mhm.
So investing is what we're here to talk about. So there is a difference. The two are not synonymous and should not be treated as such. And you need to determine and memorize these, understand the difference, and be able to say to yourself, you know what? I have been saving, but I haven't been investing. Or I have been investing, but I haven't been saving. I haven't been saving. And let me tell you why using investing as a savings is dangerous. If I were to say I'm going to take $10,000 and invest it, and that's going to be me and my wife's emergency fund in case something goes wrong. If that investment goes under, if that stock market or crashes or something happens, now not only is your investment hurt, but your savings is not hurt, and you don't have any money for a rainy day.
Mhm.
So it's important to do both, and that's why they're different. So they're not synonymous, and they should not be treated as such. But we're here to talk about real estate. So why do we save or invest? Well, we save or invest because we want to get high returns or profit, or should I say that's why we invest, right? We're trying to get high
Mhm.
returns, we're trying to get some profit. Or we want to fund our retirement, right? Now you can do that with savings or investment, but we want to fund our retirement. Remember what FIRE stands for? Do you remember that?
Oh man,
Remember FIRE
I
gave you
remember
life,
we
right?
talked about this. Yes,
We want financial independence
retire early.
and retire early. So when you hear the
Yes.
word, when you see the acronym FIRE, that means financial independence, retire early. So everybody's fighting for one of those two things, right? And that's where that acronym
Mhm.
comes from. So we save or invest for those things, also for near-term events like vacations, major purchases that we want to make, or even just some emergencies, and even tax savings. Some people save or invest because their job, their 401k, they realize that will decrease their income. And so they do it so they'll have less taxable income so they can get a tax savings. If you don't understand what I'm saying there, we'll talk about that later. But mainly what's highlighted in green is what we're here for today. We're looking for high returns or profit, and we want to possibly fund our retirement. So that's what we're going to consider real estate. So is there a biblical motive for investing? Is there a biblical motive for investing? Wow, if I stop right there and you see a picture of Oprah, you say, where is he going with this? Is there a biblical motive for investing? And I put a picture of Oprah Winfrey. Well, let's look at this. Matthew 22:36-40 says, love the Lord your God. This is our first and greatest commandment. And the second is just like it. It says, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments, loving God and loving your neighbor. I think we got the first part right? We all know who our God is and we love him dearly and we know how much he means to us and what he's done in our lives. The second, loving our neighbor, that's a little bit more challenging. We struggle with that. Some of us struggle with that. But generosity is the word, helping others. That should be our investment end goal. It includes what we give to our church, what we give to our family, friends, and our strangers in need. Now you see how not Oakwood. Now you see how Oprah comes into play. You remember when Oprah Winfrey's television show was on or her talk show was on? She was famous for being generous, for giving away a lot of gifts, helping others. She's a philanthropist at heart. I think when she's pointing there in that picture, she's probably saying, you get a gift, you get a gift, you get a gift. She's pretty famous for that statement. So that's what we want to do. It doesn't mean generosity only occurs after investing. It just means that we have more to share. So we could invest now and we could be generous now. We could be generous without investing now. But imagine if you had more money, thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, millions of dollars, what you can do for your church, what you can do for your school. So I want us to be cognizant of the fact that that's why we're here. So there are many types of investments. We talk about stocks and bonds, savings accounts, CDs, cryptocurrency. There's real estate listed in green. We're going to talk about that today. And there's some others. You've probably seen those before. We won't talk about those tonight, but those are some of the types of investments that we know about.
Okay, so we have recapped all those principles that we began with in this session, this series. So tonight is about real estate in particular, and of course, I'm sure everyone's first question is, okay, so why should I do real estate investing? How is that beneficial?
Very good question. So what are the benefits of real estate investing? Let's go through these one by one. Well, first of all, it exponentially increases your net worth. And I'll explain how. You'll see how in a moment, how it exponentially increases your net worth. You don't know what exponentially means? That means that the slope is trending high. It moves fast. It moves great. It's not constant or steady. It moves at a high rate. Number two, real estate investing typically outperforms stocks. You hear so much about the stock market, but it typically outperforms stocks. Also, housing is a market that people will always need, and rent will most always increase or at worst stay the same. In other words, everyone on this planet will need somewhere to lay their head. Okay? Everyone will need somewhere to lay their head. Most people will rent. More people rent than own. And with that in mind, there aren't enough houses. The houses that are being built and the houses that exist across the country, not just in Alabama, not just in Huntsville, are not keeping up with the rate at which our United States of America is growing. The number of people that are being born is outnumbering or is outpacing the rate at which housing is available. All right, to keep that in mind. So real estate has three types of return. An increase in value. So that property that you purchase typically will increase in value. Rental income, that's money that's coming into you. And depreciation. How is depreciation going to be a return? That's what
that seems like a contradiction. I was going to ask you that. The increase in value of the property and the rental income seem obvious, but where does depreciation come in?
Depreciation is actually something that's good for us come tax time, because what the government does is they say your house is actually losing value every day that it's on the market. So let me be clear. Let me not say value. That's probably the wrong word. Let me be clear. Your house is gaining value, right? Because it grows at about 3% per year. So if you buy a house for $1 million, it should grow at about 3% per year. So after about 30 years, 20 or 30 years, it should be worth close to $2 million because it's going to grow. It's going to continue to grow each year. That's typical real estate. But your house is also going to depreciate, meaning it's going to get older. So while it's increasing in value, the government allows you to take depreciation costs. In other words, for 27 and a half years, it will allow you to depreciate the fact that, yes, the house is growing in value, but it is over. And so you can depreciate that. It's an automatic depreciation formula that they use, and you can factor that in on your taxes. And when you do your taxes, it's automatic. You put in there, you got a rental property when you purchased it, and for 27 and a half years, and I hope that's right, it may have gone to 28. For 27 and a half or 26 and a half years, I think it is one or the other, you can depreciate the value of that house, and it'll automatically do it in TurboTax or whatever tool that you use. And that's a benefit to you, because remember that depreciation is tax deductible now. Okay, is that clear?
I think so. And I think if I remember correctly, you will talk more about some of the costs involved with investment, which may make the tax savings clearer.
Exactly.
Okay, I think I understand.
So now stocks, on the other hand, okay, stocks have two types of return. That's the increase in value and a dividend payout. Okay, in other words, when you buy a stock, let's say you buy a stock in Apple and you pay $1 for it, what you're doing is you're hoping that in 2 or 3 years or 5 years that it increases from $1 to $2. That's your increase in value and you're happy. And the dividend payout every year or quarterly or periodically, as Apple makes money, they look at their profit and they'll give a dividend payout to all the shareholders. Everybody will get a percentage. It'll be a small percentage that they give you. They say, thank you for buying our stock, holding our stock, and for being here with us. So when you put money in the stock market and you buy stock, what you're hoping is that that stock will increase in value. And second of all, that you'll get a dividend. You will not get a dividend if the stock loses money, right? Or if its value goes down. But those are the two things you have. You have two types of return, an increase in value and a dividend payout. Remember, in real estate, there's three: the increase in value, the income you get, as well as the depreciation. Okay.
So I want to jump in real quick, if I may, because I think that when I think of real estate investment, someone who isn't a real estate agent or, at all educated or certified in any way, I think this is not available to me. Like your last point there, 90% of millionaires invest in some type of real estate, commercial and or residential. Yeah, that's kind of what I assume to be true, that this is something that millionaires are involved in: real estate, investment and management and that sort of thing. And the average Joe Blow, Jane Doe is not the one who would really be able to do this sort of thing. So am I out in left field here, or help me, the average person, understand that this isn't something that is reserved for the rich?
Well, I will. In fact, I'm going to go through an example that will show you that almost anyone can get into real estate investing. There are some challenges, exactly what you stated. There's a lot of fears that a lot of people have. And so if we can just clearly break it down, what it takes to get into it, there are some steps, there are some hurdles. If I can break down those hurdles for you, you clearly understand why it's such a good investment and why it's a good idea to get into it. So that's a very good question. And I look forward to, as we go forward to the next few charts, showing you exactly how its return can be beneficial to you. So I will answer that question. All right, the last thing on this chart is that I want you to see is that 90% of millionaires invest in some type of real estate, commercial and or residential. Now, that's very, very important to understand, because we tend to think that the Bezos and Apple and all of these gentlemen, and even Warren Buffett, are rich because they have a product or something like that. Most of these gentlemen do two things. They invest their money in the stock market, and on top of that, they have real estate. How many times have you seen, whether you've seen it with your own eyes or you've just seen it around, Trump Plaza, right? Trump Plaza is real estate. He is a real estate tycoon. He made his money from real estate, and he continues to do that. And so he builds these big buildings, he rents them out. People live in them. He rents them to corporations or individuals. And Donald Trump is not known for any product that he produces, right? Jeff Bezos, those guys, they're strictly dealing with the stock market. Warren Buffett, strictly stock market. So when we think about individuals who are wealthy or individuals that we're trying to emulate, it's not necessarily something that they produce. It's just what they do. Some of the capital that they have, and a lot of it is tied up in real estate. I think it's important that we understand that. Once we understand that, we can actually start to benefit like they are. So let's keep going.
Okay, so I love this graphic. It is one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about, owning rental property. I'm like, oh my gosh. And if those of you who are watching, if you could put in the comments, what are the frustrations that you think would come with real estate? managing, property or tenants, first thing I think about is what this image shows, right? Like you got to deal with tenants who are messing up your place or not paying their rent. You got to worry about kicking them out. And I don't even know what that process involves. And then, like I said before, I'm like, who has the money to invest in a rental property and then risk someone not paying their rent? It just sounds so terrifying. Right off the bat. What are some of the frustrations that you all can think of? If you want to put them in the comments or in the chat, those are the ones that come to my mind. And then the maintenance of a property, like we have so much to do when we own a home of our own, to think about all the things that would come up, all of those things being also what you have to think about with a rental property as well. It just seems like even more of a headache, because it's a headache when we have to, keep up the home that we live in, but to take on additional, properties and have that multiplied, yeah, these are just a few of the things that I think of right off the top of my head that I probably would not want to deal with.
Those are good. Those are good, and those are very common. And remember what I said in the beginning, this is not for everybody. But
Hmm.
what I'm going to do by the end, it may not be for everybody. And I'm not saying that at the end, everybody's going to want to do this. But at the end, you will have a second thought based on what I'm going to lay out for you. And you can see how lucrative it can be. And if you would just rechannel your thinking, you can understand exactly how real estate investing can be a benefit to you. All right. So here's some of the things. You probably said all of this stuff, or you've thought all of this stuff, or you've heard it before. Real estate is not a commodity. It's not a product. It's not a service. It's not a good. So it's not, something that I can put my hands on. It's a high risk because you don't know what you're gonna get, right? At least if you have a product, you know that you could stand by your product. You could stand by your house all day long, but that depends on what kind of tenant you get in there, right? What that tenant's gonna be like. So it's really not a commodity, so it's really hard to gauge. It's hard to find a deal. It's hard to find a deal out there. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of properties are mispriced. So you're trying to get something as low as possible in terms of purchasing as low as possible so you can get a high return on your investment. But I'm going to show you why that may not be necessary. You may not need to worry about that so much. Also, you need reserve to pay for the unexpected, right? So I'm going to put someone in my property. This is what most people think. I'm going to put someone in my property. They're going to rent it. And then I've got to have money on the side in case something goes wrong, something unexpected happens. That's just too much. I'd rather take that money and invest it in something else. There's just too much risk there. So why is this worth going into? I don't want to be frustrated. And those are some of the things that make me frustrated. You need capital to get started. Well, if I had $20,000 laying around, or 50 or $100,000 laying around, I wouldn't get into real estate. I'd put that somewhere else. So a lot of people think that. Evictions sometimes happen. And some people can't handle that. Some Christians or non-Christians, a lot of Christians have a hard time with this one, of putting someone on the street. A lot of people who have the means to buy real estate and rent it out don't feel comfortable evicting someone because maybe 20, 10, 5 years ago, they were in that same predicament. And so they have a heart and they say, you know what? I was there. I can't kick these people out. And so you let them stay longer. You feel like, you know what? This is too hard. I can't do it. And so you just get out of real estate or don't want to get into it altogether. So that's understandable. Major expenses can sometimes occur. What happens if the HVAC goes out? Do you have $5,000 laying around? What happens if the roof blows off? Obviously, you have insurance, but there are situations where things occur where you have to take care of the issue. I know I had a friend who was renting out his property and one of the pipes burst. And so, water was everywhere and he got it cleaned up and filed a claim with his insurance. Turned out the deductible was lower. Excuse me, the deductible wasn't going to help him. The deductible was so high, but the expenses were so low. They get a $2,000 deductible, and the expense was only about $1,500. So the insurance company said, we can't help you. So he had to have $1,500 out of his pocket to pay for that. So those types of things happen. You have to be prepared for those. Turnover can be expensive. When I say turnover, I mean people moving. You get someone to sign a 1-year lease, They move into the house, they love it. After a year, they say, oh, we're moving on, we're gonna buy a house, and they leave. Now, they didn't destroy the place necessarily. Let's say they just left. But you know what you gotta do every time somebody leaves? You gotta paint. You have to clean the carpet. You have to do some improvements, or you have to do some repairs. It's just the natural cost of doing business. So it can be expensive. The more people that continue to move in and out of your house, that becomes expensive.
And then just to jump in there too, I imagine there may be a gap between the time that one tenant leaves and another tenant is able to go in. So let's say it takes a month or two,
That's right.
you're having to
There's,
cover that expense.
there's some vacancy there too. That's right. So you got those
Mhm.
months of vacancy, you got to factor it too. And tenants can be a headache, right? When you don't own something, then you feel privileged and you feel like you have every right to get a service that is beyond extraordinary. Tenants will treat your house like they're in the Westin or in Marriott, right? They can pick up the
Mhm.
phone and say, hey, my light bulb is not working. And somebody should knock on your door within 5 minutes and bring you a light bulb. So what happens when you have a tenant who doesn't understand what it's like to own a house, who doesn't understand that when the HVAC goes out and they have to order a part that might not come in for 3 days, now they're frustrated and they're asking you or calling you every 5 minutes saying, are you gonna bring me a fan? You gonna bring me a bottle of water? You gonna bring me ice? You gonna bring me a portable unit? You know, all of those hassles, and they don't care what time they call you, right? It could be the middle of the night, it could be the middle of the day, it could be all day. They can call you every 2 hours, every 5 hours. If they're inconvenienced, they feel like they deserve to treat the landlord any way they can because they are renting something from you. And so they can be a headache. And the cost of insurance and taxes can increase unexpectedly. So we have no control over that. But you have a steady amount you're paying, and then all of a sudden they say, you know what, we're going to increase 10%, 15%, well, that cuts into your profit. And then the worst part, there's years of break even or worse, loss. So coming into this, you have to understand that I hear people saying real estate is great, real estate is great, but guess what? There's going to be some years where your expenses are going to outpace your income, your revenue. And you might break even or you might lose. But I'm going to show you once again why this could be advantageous regardless, even though you did take a loss. All right. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just feel like there's so many other questions that can be asked, and I know we don't have the time to dig into it because I immediately thought about, being a good Christian and the saints call you up and say, hey, we have a family that needs a place to stay and they don't have any money yet and they don't have a job yet and you feel like you need to let them stay. And then also with the tenants needing things, it's like, what are the limits of if you're a landlord, what are the limits for what you should be providing to those tenants? And so anyway, I know there's probably lots of questions. I know there's many that are coming to my mind as you're talking, but all of these things make it seem like this is not a good idea. So let's get into the good stuff. Maybe some of those questions will be answered as you go along.
And like I talked about earlier, let's go back to the picture of Oprah. Wouldn't it be great if you owned several properties and you could let people in the church live in them rent free?
Mm-hmm.
Where there was no expense, or where you were doing so well and you own those properties outright that you knew people that were displaced, you could say, hey, live in there for 6 months, no problem. God has blessed me, so I want to bless you. So that's where we're trying to get to. Unfortunately, with real estate, initially, until we get to that point, there's a lot of expenses. And so you may not have the ability to do that. And that's what makes it challenging. All right, I'm going to move a little bit faster because I know we're going to run out of time, and I want to get to a couple of examples, or one example in particular that can break this down clearly. So ask your questions in the chat, like she said, or if you want to email me or we talk later, that's fine. But let's move a little bit quicker. I'm trying to explain it as best I can, but I know our time's going to run out, and I don't want that to happen. All right, so here's some good to knows for real estate investing. All right, money is made when you purchase and sell. Money is made when you purchase and sell. What does that mean? Well, Dr. Roper, that doesn't make any sense because you just told me money can be made when my rent comes in, right? When I get revenue. But I want you to understand this. Money is made when you purchase because you want to get it at a low value. If the house is in the neighborhood of worth $100,000, you want to try to get it for 70 or 80 because right there you're coming in with equity. All right. That's when you are actually making money. And then in the profit, remember I told you they increase about 3% per year. So if you held it for 20 or 30 years and it's worth 100,000 when you brought it, by the time 30 years passes, it should be worth about $200,000 or $300,000. So when you sell it now, you're making money. In between there, and this is why we say money is made when you purchase and sell. In between there, the money that is being paid, the rent that you're getting, that revenue is being used to actually pay the mortgage, to pay for maintenance, to pay for repairs, to pay for insurance, to pay for taxes. So don't worry about trying to make money in the middle. You worry about trying to get it low, sell it high, and then walk away with profit. Or if you're even, things might be even better for you where you can actually pay that thing off earlier than 30 years. And then that profit will be yours and you can actually start to benefit from that. But a lot of people believe that if I buy a rental property and I start making money, that I need to spend that money right away. You're going to have a lot of years where you're just trying to get that principal down so that you can one day retire with this property, or one day you pay it off and you're able to use that money as part of your income. But that doesn't happen right away. It takes a while for that to happen. Okay. So you want to purchase at a discount, all right, unless you know something about the future. Let's go back to the example I use. If houses are worth $100,000 in this neighborhood and you want to get one and they have several on the market, unless you know something about the future, try to get it for 70, 80, 85, something like that. But at the same time, be careful, because a cheaper property, if you get it for, let's say you get a steal of a deal, you see one that's for $40,000 now, and you say, oh, I want that one, $40,000, that's perfect, I like that. But remember, a cheaper property, probably if somebody's selling it for $40,000 and it's worth $100,000, it probably has a lot of work that needs to be done on it. And so a cheaper property will usually mean you're gonna get a higher return on your investment, but it's gonna result in more work. You can go in some neighborhoods and you can see houses that are falling apart, and an investor will come in there and buy that thing for pennies on the dollar, but he has to put a lot of work into that. Those investors usually have a crew, a construction crew or something like that. You don't, you may not. So you don't want to take on something like that. So, excuse me, don't be so stuck on trying to get a cheap property. If you know something, and that's why I said you want to be careful, because if you know something about the future, for instance, it's a neighborhood where Amazon's about to build a distribution center about half a mile or a mile down the street, and you heard this at the city council meeting. And then you say, man, I'm going to get ready for this. They're coming here in 5 years. I want to buy a property. Then you might be willing to say, I'm going to pay $100,000 for this property because I know in a few years it's going to be worth a lot more. How many of us would have purchased properties in Huntsville at their value 3 years ago if you knew that the houses in Huntsville would be worth 3 times, in most cases 2 times, I should say, 2 times what they're worth now? If you're not from Huntsville, you don't know what I'm talking about. If you're from Huntsville and you're listening and you're watching this from Huntsville, you know that the houses on the northwest side of town used to be $50,000, $60,000. And right now, 2 or 3 years later, they're $170,000, $180,000. If you knew now, then what you know now, you would have purchased those properties at 70,000, or maybe even 80, or maybe even 90, because you knew that Huntsville's about to blow up, or something's about to happen in Huntsville. Let me get this thing at whatever price I can get it. But we don't know all the time. So the rule of thumb is get it cheap, as cheap as you can. But if you know something about the city, or you know something about the area, you know something's about to happen, go ahead and get it at full value, because it's going to come back to you. All right.
Real quick, Everett,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, is there some guidelines, or are there some guidelines for clues that people may take to heart and say, oh, because of this, I should consider this area? In other words, you mentioned, the Amazon data center. Like, what are some of those signals that a particular area is about to increase in value? Because those of us who live in Huntsville never would have thought Northwest side would be the area to invest in because it didn't seem like it was going anywhere. So what should have been some of those clues maybe that we paid attention to, those of us who live here?
That's a good question. So every question you ask, I say is a good question, but you are asking some good questions. So I'm not. That's not just. That's not just. So let me think about that. Let me say it this way. When several years ago, when I used to help people buy or rent houses, and we look in the Madison area or the South area of Huntsville, houses were renting for about $1 a square foot. About $1 a square foot was the average, was the norm. So in other words, if you have a 3,000 square foot home and you want to rent it, you can expect to pay about $2,800 to $3,000 per month. Okay, that's in that high area of Madison. When you come back to Northwest Huntsville or North Huntsville, it did not apply. The same 3,000 square foot house in Northwest Huntsville was about 50 cents or 40 cents, okay, per square foot. So you can get that house for about $1,500, $1,400, $1,300. Big disparity. The issue there was location, where people wanted to live, What happened was, as you watch the news, as you listen to the news, and you hear about things like, I mentioned Amazon and Facebook, which both did come to Huntsville. When you hear about Redstone Arsenal growing, you hear about BRAC, which is base realignment. You hear about Space Command coming to Huntsville. When you hear about the FBI coming to Huntsville. See, I just named off 5 or 6 things that over the past 5 years we heard. If I were not only an investor, but just an individual, I would say, you know what? This can't last. There's no way this can be sustained. Because if all of those people are coming to Huntsville, these houses that are renting for 40 cents, right, per square foot, where on the other side of town, it's almost twice that. Something's got to give. Now, remember the word gentrification? Everybody knows what gentrification is? Everybody knows how what happens is usually lower incomes, they usually get pushed out because downtown revitalizations or revitalizations in some areas start to creep into other lower areas. The other thing you could have looked at in Huntsville is notice that Huntsville closed about 3 of its what we call low-income projects. They closed those projects, and what they did was they gave everyone in those projects Section 8 vouchers. And they said, we don't want you to live in the projects anymore. We love you so much. We want you to have a house like everybody else. We're going to make the playing field equal. That should be a clue. That should stand out in our mind that where are these people going to live? Okay, they're moving from tenements and duplexes and fourplexes. They're tearing them down, and they're giving these people Section 8 vouchers and saying, go live somewhere else in either houses or other apartments. That should have been a clue right there. They're going to have to be placed somewhere. So to answer your question, we have to just have we have to do our research, and we have to have our ear to the ground and our eyes glued to the television. One thing that we don't do very well as young people and as African Americans is really attend city council meetings. That's where a lot of information comes out. They plan for the future. Urban planners plan for 10, 15, 20 years out. So who are the people that are sitting on urban planning boards, and who are the people that are going to city council meetings? They are not you and me. They are construction workers and investors and individuals who own property and who are looking to buy property. And so what happens is we usually get on the bandwagon late. So we say, oh, wow, I hear the prices are going up. Let me try to buy something. And what you find is that there's not a lot available because they've already been brought up. And we think it's unfair. And really, they really haven't done anything more than we could do because city council meetings are open to the general public. And so you can find out what's going on in your particular area. All right.
Got it.
All right. So here's some good to knows. Let's keep going. Buy with cash if possible. Do research. I just talked about that. Understand there'll be losses, gains, and frustrations. I've talked about that. Keep reserve to pay for the unexpected. We've talked about that. Try to avoid major repairs. Turnkey is best. And turnkey means you just want to buy something that the next day you can put somebody in it to rent, right? You want to avoid major repairs. If a house is selling for $20,000 but the average in the neighborhood is $100,000. You're probably gonna have to put on a roof, put in a floor, build up some walls. It's probably in bad shape. You don't want that. That's, unless you do that kind of work, you might want to stay away from something like that. So you want to make it as simple as possible. And the last one is most important. Don't make it personal. Commercial grade is okay. I've known people who have said, I want to get into the rental business. They purchase a property, and you know what they do? They purchase that property and they start treating it like it's their own. I want marble floors, and I want LED lights, and I want it to look like it's belongs in Beverly Hills. That way somebody will want to rent it. Yeah, you're right. Somebody will walk in there and they will want to rent it. But you're going to spend so much of your money getting that thing looking like it belongs in Beverly Hills, but the person's not going to treat it like it's in Beverly Hills necessarily. And you'll find that you spend more money trying to keep up. If you would just use commercial grade equipment, because what's going to happen is you are going to have to, believe it or not, you're going to have to replace things over and over again through the life of the house. Something's going to happen, things are going to go wrong, so you're going to have to do upkeeps. So you don't want to necessarily buy top end. You might want to go with middle ground or commercial grade. All right, I'm going to show you an example. And I want you to just stay with me in this example. I'm going to move pretty fast, but I want you to stay with this example. There's a house that we want to purchase. It's $100,000. Okay. We decided we're going to go into this rental home business and we want to see if this is working for us. So I'm going to lay out an example to show you what Jane or John Doe would do. Purchase price is $100,000. The down payment for any investment property, typically a bank is going to say, we'll give you 80% loan to value. You have to come up with the other 20%. So let's say you have $20,000, right? You have 20% of that 100,000. So you have it from somewhere. I don't know where you had it. Maybe you saved it. Maybe you got an inheritance. I don't know, but you have 20%. So you put that down payment. You're ready to go. So now you know you're going to be financing the house at $80,000 because you had $20,000 of cash, right? You're going to finance it over at 6% for 30 years, right? You're going to have to pay closing costs. Closing costs are about 3%. So 3% of $100,000 is $3,000. So you hopefully have that as well. So you're coming out of pocket $23,000. Right? Remember, closing cost is not something that applies to the principal. That just goes to close the loan. $20,000 does go to the principal. So your loan is actually going to be $80,000. Closing costs you lose, that goes away. When I say lose it, it goes for fees and expenses. So you got an $80,000 loan financed at 6% for 30 years. Okay. So your total monthly payment is $400. I can't see it, it's falling off the screen, but it's $480 a month, I believe it is. Okay. That's your monthly payment. The monthly payment is $5,700 per year, $5,760 per year. That's how much you got to pay, $480 per month. Well, that's not too good. That's not too bad. That actually looks good. Let me tell you why. Because we're going to rent this property for $900. So right off the bat, we get excited. We say, ooh, okay, this looks good. But let's not move too fast because we have to pay taxes, insurance, and we want to put some aside for maintenance. And typically, we just use a factor that says 1% each. For each of these, we want to save about 1%. 1% for taxes, 1% for insurance, and 1% for maintenance. All right, so our expenses now, okay, are going to be $8,760. $8,760. That's the $5,760 per year, right, for the loan, and the $1,000 each for the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. So $8,760 per year. Okay, I brought that number up from the previous chart. We're going to rent for $900 a month. And there's something called a vacancy rate. We're going to use a vacancy rate of about 0.9. What that says is we believe that from 1 to 10 or a factor of 0 to 1, that the house is going to be vacant about 0.1% of the time. All right. So, or 0.1, that's our rate. We feel that it's going to be occupied 90% of the time, 10% of the time it's not. We just use that as a factor just for estimating purposes. We're going to multiply those two together. When we multiply that rate by the $900 per month, we're going to get $9,720 per year. Okay, so right there we haven't lost anything, and we have everything covered. We got our maintenance, we got our insurance, we got our taxes. So how much money did we make? How much money did we make? Our total profit is $960 per year. I took the $9,720 that we got in income. I subtracted the $8,760 of our expenses. Now we're going to have $960 per year, roughly $1,000 per year that we can use at our disposal. Yay, we're happy. We are happy. And our return on investment is 4% per year when we do that, because I'm taking that $960 that we're going to get per year, that's our profit per year, and I'm dividing that by the $23,000. The $23,000 is the $20,000 that we put in from our own pocket and the $3,000 that we paid in closing costs. So return on investment for this entire deal per year is about 4%. All right, not bad. We haven't lost anything. We haven't lost anything. All right, remember, you're paying $0 out of pocket on this property. Okay, so you purchased it. The only thing you put out of your pocket is how much? $23,000. The $20,000 and then the $3,000. But if all things continue moving the way they're moving, the person stays in, they pay on time. I'm throwing a lot of factors in here, right? A lot of risk. They pay on time. You don't have to worry about many improvements. The HVAC doesn't break every year and you have to replace it every year. The roof doesn't cave in, all of that. You're paying nothing out of pocket on this property. You're like a middleman. You just collect their rent and you give it to the bank and you put some aside and you pay taxes and insurance. Okay. At the end of 30 years, the tenant, at the end of the loan term of 30 years, the tenant has paid your loan for you. They're pretty much paid. They're paying the loan down. They paid it all. You haven't done anything. And because this money that they paid is counted as income, it factors into your return on investment. So let me do that again. So $80,000 is what we paid for the house. We're going to divide that by the 30 years, right? We actually paid $80,000, or excuse me, not paid, financed $80,000 over 30 years. So that's $2,666 per year that we paid to pay down this house. How much of that did you pay? $0. None came out of your pocket. That's how much per year. So our return on investment for the loan itself is 15%. Our ROI goes from 4 to 15 because that $2,666 that's being paid for us each year divided by the $23,000 we put in gives us a return on our money of 15% per year. Now, that beats the stock market any day. The stock market averages about 12%, or has averaged recently. 6% is considered a good year in the stock market. So when people tell you that real estate is a good investment, this is the primary reason they're telling you why. But it goes even deeper than that. Housing appreciates about 3% per year. Okay. So in this scenario, that $100,000 house in 30 years is now worth $280,000. I'm going to ask the question again. How much money did you pay towards the loan? Nothing. The tenant did. All you did is collect the money and you paid the bank and you put some away for maintenance and repairs. Okay, now we haven't factored in all those other things that we talked about, all the frustrations like evictions and repairs and all that. So we're gonna have to just take that as just par for the course, right? That's across the board. But all things being equal, look at what happened. So after those 30 years are over, the house is paid for. I guarantee you what has happened. What do you think has happened? I bet you rent has gone up. Wouldn't you think after 30 years? So you're not going to continue to get $900. How many of you are paying the exact same rent you paid? I'm not even going to say 30 years. Let's go back 10 years.
Mhm.
If we know what we paid in rent when we got married, right?
Right. Very different from what it is now.
Exactly. So how much how much was rent 15 years ago versus what it is now? So if I run these same numbers, not using $900 per month, but let's just use $1,500, right, per month. Wow,
Mhm.
astronomical, astronomical how this would change.
Mm.
So that's why they say that there are three factors. It's the value, how much you get the property for, also the rent, and then the depreciation. Because remember, you're still writing off that depreciation for the property. We talked about that, about taxes. The
Mhm.
the rent is going up, so it's appreciating. It's going up. You're getting more coming in. And guess what else? The house is appreciating at 3.5% per year. So let's say after 30 years, you say, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's worth 280. I paid 80. I'm taking my money and I'm leaving. You're welcome to do that because you're walking away with $280,000. How much did you pay towards the loan? Nothing.
Mm.
What did you do? Now, you might have had some hassles along the way. Over 30 years, I bet you did. Something went wrong. You might have had a fire. You might have had a flood. Something went wrong. And that's why we say there's going to be down years, there's going to be good years. But in the grand scheme of things, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Mm.
Okay. So there are other factors to consider. All right. This will help the situation. Here's some factors to consider. The first one, paying off the loan faster. Everything I used was 30 years, but what if you were able to pay this loan off faster? And that is quite possible because all of us will probably continue to get raises on our jobs. If you say, you know what, I'm going to put some money of my own money towards paying this thing down faster. Suppose you pay this thing off in 25 years or 22 years. Increase in rent. We talked about that. As rent increases, you're making more money. What if you could refinance for lower loan terms? You got it at 6%, remember that? But what if the loan interest rates went down? You can now refinance this thing for 3% or 2%. And then selling it, we talked about selling it and taking the money out. Or look at this one, using the equity, okay, because it's worth $280,000 now. What if I use that equity to purchase another one and start all over again? Okay, that's how you build. Okay, so even if you do nothing, even if you do nothing, even if you do nothing, here's the depreciation part. You can deduct repairs, homeowners association fees in that subdivision, insurance that you pay, advertising to find a new tenant, eviction costs that you pay a lawyer, interest that you paid on the loan, depreciation of the house. We talked about that. Look at the tax breaks that are just waiting for you when you own property and you rent it out. Look at the tax breaks. So how do we get started? And we'll end with this. We'll end with this. So the first thing you do is build your credit score, right? Get a credit score that will allow a bank to give you money or make a bank want to give you money. Step two, save some money because you know you're going to have some money on the side. Save some money. Save some money for the down payment, for the closing costs like we talked about, for miscellaneous expenses, for vacancies. I don't want anybody to walk into this. If you are trying to dig yourself out of a hole, please don't go tell your wife or go tell your husband, guess what, babe, we need to get a house today. We need to go get a house to rent it because it's going to dig us out of this hole. No, it's going to dig you into a deeper hole. I would say steps 1 and 2 are the most important things you can do right away. Okay. So don't make the matter worse. Like I said, this is not for everybody, but this is something that everyone should consider at some point in their life. Okay. You're going to have 2 years of tax returns that the bank is going to want to look at to see if you're even worthy to give the money. When I say 2 years of good tax returns, you want to show that you're trending in the right direction. So if your tax return had a net of, $75,000 family combined income, $75,000 in X year, then the next year it doesn't need to go down to 60,000. And the next year go down to 55. They want to see that you're increasing and that things are going in a positive direction for you. Step 4, talk with a lender, get pre-qualified so you know how much you're gonna get pre-qualified for and how much house you can afford. Don't be afraid to shop around. A lot of people say, I'm gonna go to one lender, ask them to pre-qualify me, and that's it, because I don't want the hits on my credit. Well, over the years, the credit bureaus have realized that most people feel that this is going to happen. So what they do is they'll allow you to shop around, and over a 6 months period, if they see multiple hits because multiple places have been looking at your credit, they'll count that as one. They won't count that as separate hits. And so don't worry about shopping around, going to several banks, talking to several bankers and see who can work with you. The other thing is identify soon to grow areas, new homes, restaurants, schools, etc. We talked about that. City council meetings. Find out what's going on in a particular area and look in that area for the future. Doesn't have to be now, it can be the future. And don't only look for bargains. Don't be penny wise and dollar foolish, like I said before. If an area is hot, you might want to pay full dollar for it, top dollar for it, because you know it's going to increase in the future. In other words, obey your research. Don't be so stubborn that you say, you know what? I know this is a hot area, but I refuse to pay what it's worth. Okay, no problem, because while you sit, 2 years later, 1 year later, it could be worth even more, and you're even further behind the 8 ball. And the last couple of steps. Step 7, identify a property manager if desired. Now, you can do this yourself, right? You can collect your rent, you can work on the maintenance, you can do all of that yourself, no problem. It just depends on what type of involvement you want to have with the property. A property management manager charges about 10 to 13% of the rent. So with that $900 example, $90 of that each month will go to that property manager. Once again, that is tax deductible. So you can write that off because that's an expense of owning that house. And you want to determine your level of involvement if you do give it to a property manager. Do you want to have full involvement? In other words, he or she needs to call me every time something goes wrong, or every time something happens, I want to know. Or are you going to say, you know what? I'm going to have some money in reserve. And as long as it's not more than $1,000 or $500 or $200, you go ahead and fix it. Leaks, plumbing clogs, whatever. I don't even want to be involved. Just send me my money each month. Send me my check each month. Some people want to be fully involved, some do not. But bottom line is, if you plan to self-manage, be available, be considerate, be responsible, be dependable, be timely, and be fair. Don't be a slumlord. Don't be the type of manager just looking for the money. It's more than just money. It's being a good landlord, because a good landlord will make a tenant want to stay with them longer. The longer a tenant wants to stay with you, the more money you're going to make. Okay. Upgrade periodically. This adds equity to your house, gives it more value. And then finally, there are no money down options. A lot of you probably discouraged because you're saying, I don't have any money to do this, so this makes no sense. You know, there are no money down options. First of all, you can get a personal loan. You can get a personal loan that will help you with that down payment and closing costs. You can talk to the bank to get a personal loan, or you can get a personal loan from an individual. You might know someone in your church, in your family, that says, hey, man, I'm trying to do something. Would you let me borrow $20,000, $23,000, or X amount, whatever it may be? You'd be surprised. Some people borrow from their 401k. I put that in red because it's risky and I do not advise it. But I wanted to put it on here to let you know that that is an option. The reason why you don't want to borrow from your 401k is because if you take money out of your 401k while it's compounding, you're actually hurting it because you're not making money on that money. Now, it's risky in that regard. You're pulling it out of the stock market and you're putting in something else that's more risky. And I get it. Some people say they're willing to take that risk. I think the stock market should be separate from what we're doing here. But some people do advise that this is a good way to invest, pulling out of your 401k. I would never advise that, but that is an option that I wanted to throw up here. Another one is to pull equity from a personal home or other asset that you may have. You may have a personal home and you want to get into the real estate business, then go check on getting equity or HELOC, and maybe that can help you with the down payment so you don't have to worry about it. And some banks offer no money down payment options. They have incentives, and they have programs where there's no money down for investors, especially if you're a small investor or first time or even minority or woman owned or small business. So in summary, real estate investing is an excellent option for increasing income and wealth. Real estate is an excellent option for increasing income and wealth. Notice I said an excellent option, because once again, I want to stress it. It's not for everybody. It's just an option for increasing income and wealth. You won't hurt my feelings if you say, you know what, I just can't. The risk is too high. I don't want to deal with tenants. I don't want to deal with people. I've known people who have told me horror stories. Got it. Understand. That makes sense. It's not for you. But if you want to diversify, you want to have money in the stock market, you want to have a 401k, you would like to have life insurance policy that has a whole life term that actually gives you some money or invests some money for you, and you want to have a little bit of real estate on the side just to diversify along with your Social Security income you're expecting when you retire, it is an excellent option. And no one says you have to do 10 properties or 5 or 3 or 2. You can just do one, and you could go, it could take you a long way. I've stated this several times, real estate investing is not for everyone. Number one, it's costly. It's costly. You've seen the upfront cost. It requires some patience for those 30 years, because until it's paid off, it's really not doing much for you. You are getting those tax benefits and it is appreciating, but something that appreciates and you haven't sold it really does you no good. So the value of something means nothing if you still own it. It's when you sell it that you really get the benefit. What good is it to have this house that's worth $280,000 if I haven't sold it, because I can't realize the $280,000. So it requires some patience for 30 years until this thing is paid off, and some patience for the downtimes when things are not going well. Okay. It requires some generosity. It requires you to be generous because you may not want to evict. You may not want to be that type of landlord. You may not want to be a mean landlord. You may give people a break when they're late on their rent. One of the things in a lease is that there's a penalty for being late, 10% penalty, 5%. And you say, God has blessed me, so I'm not going to charge them a late fee. Or if they don't want to pay me this month, they can pay me next month. Some people are good at that. Some people are not. Some people see it as a business, and that's the way they treat it. They separate generosity from business. Some people don't. Some people mix them together, and it is what it is. And we talked about the advantages and the disadvantages. So there's several advantages. We've talked about them. There's several disadvantages as well. And we've talked about those. Bottom line is, do your research. Do your research. It may not be for you, but you know what? It might be. And like I said, maybe one property is a good way to start. Maybe do it for several years and see how it goes. Or if it's not for you, it's no problem. You can still have a successful wealth building scheme or strategy, and you can still retire without having a real estate or rental property at your disposal. So that is it for this evening. I know that we have covered quite a lot. I probably went over in time. These are our discussion topics once again. And I am so happy that we were able to get through week 4, investing in real estate. This is one that's been hot. A lot of people ask me this all the time about how to get into real estate investing. So I'm really, really happy that I was able tonight to kind of break this down. And as you can tell, you really need about 2 hours, because I like to answer questions when I'm doing this workshop. I like to answer questions because there's a lot of good concerns that people raise, or a lot of issues that people will raise that I think this workshop won't do justice without interaction. So I hope this was beneficial to you this evening.
Thank you
Dr.
so
Kim?
much.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this is good information, and there are so many questions that I know we weren't able to get to tonight. But if you would just and you are sharing the contact information, how individuals can reach out to you to get further information. I think that'll be really helpful for those who want to dig into this a little deeper. And if you don't mind, I'm going to ask that you close us out in prayer. And I want to thank everyone again for being with us this evening. And thank you for all the great information that you shared.
Oh, no problem. Bow your heads. Lord, we thank you for the thought and the wherewithal and the desire to invest and to save and to be better stewards. Lord, we recognize that this is one of the things that you required of us, Lord, not only to be fruitful, not only to be successful, not only to plow the field and Lord, to support our families, Lord. But Lord, as in the parable that you gave, you want us to invest and you want us to use our money wisely. And you want us to not only love you, but to love others, to be generous, to create generosity, create funds that will help us be generous and allow us to be philanthropists, to help our churches, to help our schools grow, to help individuals, to help families that are struggling, Lord. So this is just one other tool that we talked about tonight: real estate, investing, Lord. Those that are interested, let your Holy Spirit talk to them, work with them so they know the right time to approach it, the right way to approach it. Those that are not interested, Lord, whatever avenue they choose, whether it's life insurance or their retirement, whatever they're struggling with or they're dealing with, or whatever road they're going down, Lord, help them to keep you in all the decisions that they have to make as it relates to their finances. Continue to bless our workshop and continue to bless the abundant series that we're going through. Let everyone be touched and blessed. And thank you for our moderator this evening. And Lord, just continue to bless us. In your name I do pray. Amen. Well, thank you all very much. Have a very, very good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.